To the left-hand side for Vieira, who'll play it through to Gabriel Jesus, who's in here for Arsenal. Gabriel Jesus to finish it off. Oh, what a way to do it! Gabriel Jesus seals the points for Arsenal. He's back, and he's back with a bang.
Into the penalty area it goes. Gabriel's header, and it's into the back of the net. Arsenal take an early lead through Gabriel.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the daily Arsenal podcast with me, Harry Symeou.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're all good. Hope you're all well. Welcome back to another live episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. And as always during the summer, it feels like we've got quite a bit to talk about. It's weird, isn't it? It always blows my mind. The fact that it's the summer, Arsenal aren't in action, and any action that they will be involved in over the next few weeks is pre-season action, which of course doesn't carry the same weight and doesn't have the same significance. Yet here we are every single day with transfer stuff to talk about. I almost feel like the close season is busier than the actual season because there seems to be more transfer rumors swirling around than at any other time in the year, which is understandable given it's the main window. But it feels like people have a greater appetite for this kind of stuff than they do for actual football analysis and chat. I've never really been able to get my head around that. I do wonder if that's because they enjoy this stuff more. You can let me know. Do you enjoy this transfer chat more? Or is it because we're so starved of football that we have to resort to anything that will do or anything that's to do with our football team? And even if a lot of it is hypothetical and a lot of it is conversations that in the end might prove to be irrelevant because a lot of the transfers we'll discuss over the course of the summer aren't going to come to fruition. I don't know, but let me know, because I just find it wild. Like every summer I kind of go into it and I think, right, it's been a really busy, hectic season. I need to wind it down a little bit and just have some time for myself and rest and try and get back sort of to a fresh state of mind. But the transfer stories come thick and fast. And as a result of that, you get no break. Not that I'm complaining, but you just get no break. And you feel like by the time you feel like you're at the point where you can wind down a little bit, actually the season is just around the corner. And that's exactly where I'm at now. Quick reminder to those of you that are regulars here. If you haven't done so already, leave a like on the video. You know exactly what you're going to get from me on this episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner. Some Arsenal chat, some interaction with the live chat as well. So leave that like. It really, really does help. Subscribe to the channel too. We're on our way to 35,000 YouTube subscribers. And I can see, looking at the analytics, that we are averaging something between 30 and 40,000 unique listeners per month on the audio platforms as well, which means the Chronicles of a Gooner community has grown way beyond what I ever thought it could grow to. So I'm really, really super grateful and chuffed with that. But your support would really, really help. And it can be by doing something as simple as leaving a like on the video. If you want to become a Patreon of the channel and of the podcast, you can do so. The link is below. And I've got a message going out to all our patrons a little bit later on today. So keep an eye on your inboxes if you are a Patreon of the Chronicles of a Gooner. I can see there's a fair few of you signed up at the moment as well, which is great. Okay, what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk Mikel Merino. We're going to talk Eddie Nketiah. We're going to talk Emil Smith-Rowe. We're going to talk Jakub Kiwior. We're going to talk Alexander Zinchenko. We've got lots and lots to get through, as always. I think it's time that we dive into our first story. Shall we dive into the first story, or shall we dive into the live chat first? I feel like I got to say hello. Damien Kelly's always telling me off about my timing. Good morning to you, Damien. I hope you're well, my friend. Temiola, obviously not happy with my timing either, has called it the Chronicles of a Late Gooner. Fair. Damien on Mikel Merino says, Mikel got his Spanish Xhaka. I like the fact that he used to play alongside Odegaard at Real Sociedad. We got Matt joining us from Chicago. John says, morning all, when are the 90 Min shows coming back? I'm missing the lads. So the 90 Min stuff's been a little bit up and down over the last few weeks because, as you would have seen, some of us were out in Germany covering the Euros for 90 Min. I was there for the knockout stages. Jacob was there for the group stages. And so we kind of did a bit each. So that's why the studio shows haven't been happening in their usual format. We've got lots of transfer content coming out over the next couple of weeks. And then I think around about the 5th of August, we're going to get back in the studio and get back to the usual format. So it's just because everybody's been off doing different things. Grizz has gone over to LA, I believe, to follow Liverpool on their pre-season tour. So yeah, lots going on, but we will be back on that very, very soon. Big hello to Marcella, to Mafia Boss, to Aidan, to Owen, to Hacker, to Robert. We've got Ratul as well. Delise, who's just signed up as a member on the YouTube channel. Thank you so much for that. Really, really appreciate it. Clem Diggity says, oi, been here pre 5K subs. Wow. He says, great to see the channel grow and bring on the deserved 50K landmark. Hopefully we get there in the not too distant future. That would really be amazing. Big hello to Franklin, to Kadir, and to Kevin as well. Apologies if I missed anybody out on the hellos. There are lots and lots of names in the live chat at the moment. Right, it is finally time, 6.5 minutes in, he says, to dive into today's first story. Let's do it. Okay, we're going to begin by talking Eddie Nketiah. We've been talking over the last few days about Marseille's interest in the Arsenal striker. I've said plenty of times over the last few days that I believe Marseille would be a really, really good move for him. I put a post out to that effect on X last night, and I'll just read it back to you to make sure that I'm sort of covering everything that I said at the time. I said that I think that Marseille would be a great landing spot for Eddie. He'd get regular starts. I'm confident that he'll score goals in that particular league. And at a club the size of Marseille, under an exciting coach in Roberto De Zerbi, playing in front of that crowd week in, week out, I really do think it could be the making of him, just like it was the making of William Saliba. It really, really was that loan spell that he had at Marseille. Also, the good thing that Eddie has is that he has experience of handling the pressure that comes with playing a really, really big club. And make no mistake about it, even though Marseille haven't won Ligue 1 for God knows how long, they are still a huge football club around whom there is always huge expectation. Sometimes that expectation is unfair. Sometimes it feels like the Marseille supporters demand way more than is realistically possible from their team, from their managers, etc., etc. But Eddie Nketiah has been at a big club for a number of years and has come under the microscope for his performances plenty of times before. He knows what it's like to deal with that pressure, to know, how to kind of handle that and how to be able to, I guess, block that out and focus on his own game and focus on what he's doing. Now, we talked yesterday about a report that said that Marseille were looking to take Eddie Nketiah on loan with an obligation to buy being put into the contract at the end of that term. And I said yesterday, it was like Marseille kicking the can down the road, right? They know they want the player. They know that, he's somebody that they see being a part of their future, but perhaps they're trying to pull a fast one or trying to be just a little bit creative in terms of the way they're spending their money so that they can do more business. If we look at this post that I'm sharing on the screen, for those of you listening, don't worry, I'll read it to you. It is a piece from L'Equipe, a very well-known French outlet, who say that Olympique Marseille are moving forward with the arrival of English striker Eddie Nketiah. Now, they don't really talk about the nature of the deal. They don't really explain what it is that Marseille are trying to achieve in terms of an agreement with Arsenal. Is it a loan with an obligation? Is it a straight transfer? Is it a loan with an option? They don't really go into the details too much. But what they do say about Marseille at the moment is that they're preparing to change 80% of their starting 11 during this summer window, and that they continue to be busy on all fronts. So essentially, Eddie Nketiah coming in would be part of a much bigger, wider project at Marseille. And they are looking at situations like Eddie Nketiah's and thinking, if we can do a deal that allows us to get the guy that we want, but can pay a little bit later, and that frees up funds and finance to be able to go out and do some of the other business we want, then that's the ideal outcome. Might not be the ideal outcome for Arsenal, as we've discussed previously, But given that there are reports coming out of France claiming Eddie Nketiah has agreed personal terms with Marseille, it appears that he is all in on this, that this is a move that he's open to, that he's willing to make. And I talked about it yesterday. I feel like to a degree, to a point, we kind of owe Eddie Nketiah to try and see if what he wants is something that we can make work. Can we do something that works for us and for Eddie Nketiah, given the loyalty he's shown, given the fact that he was probably promised a lot more game time than he actually got? Can we do something that suits all parties? I think Arsenal have a duty to Eddie Nketiah to at least consider Marseille's proposal ahead of everybody else's, if that is the move that he wants. And based on all the accounts that we're reading out of France, it seems like that is the case. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat box about this. Lots of good morning messages, by the way. Good morning to all of you as well. Really do appreciate it. Here we go. This is one. Well, I said thanks for the good morning messages. This is the type of message that I've become really accustomed to over the last few years. Harry, all you do is be positive and try to get in press rooms and make a few quid. You're just like AFTV. Oh dear. All I do is try and get into press rooms. Okay, mate, whatever. And make a few quid. You're just like AFTV. Oh my God. I'm sorry that I, unlike everybody else in the world, apparently go to work to earn a bit of money to look after my family. I guess people should all just work for free. I bet you work for free, don't you? Yep, I'm sure you do. Anyway, John Daly says, I think these kind of deals are quality. Either we get 25 to 30 million this summer, or we know the amount we get next summer is also a big positive. Like the Raya deal is a bit of a no-brainer. I mean, this is partly why I haven't sat here and gone, what are Marseille playing at? This is ridiculous. Because essentially what they're seeking to do is something very similar to what we did with David Raya. Getting the player that we want, making sure that the selling party get what they want, albeit slightly delayed, having that agreement in place. If you don't have the funds come through straight away, unless you're like really up against it when it comes to FFP, you're probably still going to be able to make that work for you. Having a signed agreement that says that you're going to receive Eddie Nketiah's fee in 12 months time is for a club like Arsenal is as good as having the money, because you can probably leverage that deal should you need to borrow money, should you need to request greater funds from the ownership, etc., etc. So I'm not really worried about the fact that it'll be paid later down the line. It's just the way that teams are doing deals. And there's another aspect to this, and there's another facet to this that I think people need to consider as well. French football is going through a really, really difficult time at the moment. If you get the opportunity, there's a great podcast called On the Continent, which has Andy Brassel and various guests from European football. Andy Brassel's a really good friend of mine. He's been on here before. And they do a really great job of explaining the problem with French football right now, the issue around the TV deal. It was promised, long story short, to all of the clubs that they would get £1 billion or €1 billion TV deal, and they didn't. They ended up getting half of that. And it talks a lot about the after effects and the impact that that has, and the fact that so many teams, are now going to have to maybe scale back in terms of what they're spending, or at least get creative in the way that they do some of these deals. It's a really good listen. On the Continent, it's called. Go back and check it out. I think it was yesterday's episode, but I thought it was fantastic. Jay says Eddie got lots of minutes until he played against Fulham away. Since that game, Arteta seemed to lose trust in him. Robert says Arsenal do have a duty to Eddie, Reece and Emile Smith-Rowe. It shows a lot to the younger and up-and-coming players that if they don't make the first team, they're well-educated and looked after, which is a good reason for kids to join. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it also shows your club in a really good light, doesn't it? Like, as you say, you have the duty to those guys because you've raised them, you've nurtured them. They've been loyal. They've put up with crap in terms of a lack of game time that they probably wouldn't have had to deal with at any other club. Obviously, the flip side is they're lucky to play for Arsenal and they should cherish that as well. But also, if players start going around and saying, look, Arsenal was a great place for me because when it was time for me to go, they didn't stand in my way. I got a great football and education there. And when you sort of marry that up with all the chat about how our academy needs reviewing and how our academy needs to change and all of that, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? But anyway, Eddie Nketiah, could well be on his way to Marseille, although a deal is not agreed just yet, and it is worth remembering that. But as I say, I think that will be a really good landing spot for him. Okay, next we're going to talk about Emile Smith-Rowe, who is also being heavily linked with a move away. Fulham, Crystal Palace, both credited with having an interest in him. But according to Gunner Blog in The Athletic, he says there are players that Mikel Arteta and Arsenal would prefer to sell ahead of Emile Smith-Rowe. Arteta remains a huge fan of the player, and the club have not been particularly enamoured with the midfielders available on the market this summer. The wishes of the player, I beg your pardon, may be the determining factor. If Smith-Rowe expresses a firm desire to leave and Arsenal receive a suitable offer, the club are unlikely to stand in his way. So reading between the lines, what we're hearing here is Arsenal are not desperate to move Emile Smith-Rowe on. He is one that you could raise significant funds from. He is one that's attracting interest from fellow Premier League clubs. And that's always important because we talk a lot about the financial disparity between the Premier League and some of the other European competitions. And if you're talking about selling abroad, then I've always said that you need to adjust your expectations with regards to how much money you can expect. Now, in Emile Smith-Rowe's case, there is Premier League interest, which means you could stand to raise 25, 30 million, maybe even slightly beyond that if you get the right deal in place. But it's interesting that Arteta doesn't seem desperate. It's interesting that Arsenal aren't desperate to move him on, despite him being one of the few that I think you can guarantee a solid fee for. The wishes of the player may be the determining factor, says Gunner Blog. And I think, again, this comes back to the subject we were just talking about when it comes to some of the younger players who have been loyal, who have been patient, etc., etc. Smith-Rowe, I think if he wants the move, has to push for it. And I'm not sure if he will. I'm not sure if he'll look at things and think, I can give it one more season and give it a right crack. That was some of the rumors and some of the noises that we were hearing not so long ago, that he was happy to stay, that he would prefer to remain an Arsenal player and fight for his place rather than have to drop down a couple of levels to get regular football. But, you know, we're going to just have to wait and see on this one. I think there will be more offers for Emile Smith-Rowe, and I think those offers are going to test both Arsenal's resolve, but also his as well. Because if those offers are on the table and you're being talked about as someone that can go in and be the star and the main man in a mid-level Premier League team, that's got to be appealing when your situation currently sees you very much on the fringes of an Arsenal side. Now, obviously, you'd rather be at Arsenal than Fulham or than Crystal Palace, and I don't mean that disrespectfully to those two football clubs. But how much does he value the being at the big place and being a part of a competitive squad? Is that more valuable to Emile Smith-Rowe than his own personal sort of opportunities to play and to play regularly? So that's what he's got to weigh up. But it's interesting that Arsenal aren't dead set on selling Emile Smith-Rowe, and that actually it feels like his future is pretty much in his own hands in that sense. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The impending arrival of Riccardo Calafiori is likely to precipitate some departures in defence. Arsenal would listen to others for Jakub Kiwior and Alexander Zinchenko, with Kieran Tierney also likely to leave. Again, that is from The Athletic and from Gunner Blog. I mean, I think we all figured that Riccardo Calafiori coming in would mean that we'd be at the very least open to a defender moving on. And we talked about this yesterday. Should it be Jakub Kiwior? He seems to be the one whose name crops up every single time. But actually, should we be looking at maybe moving someone else on, like Zinchenko, who has had his fair share of injury problems and also, I would argue, maybe doesn't really fit in with what we're doing now? Certainly did 18 months ago, but maybe doesn't now. Should it be Takahiro Tomiyasu that we consider replacing, given his really bad injury record? I don't know. But I'm not surprised to learn that Arsenal would listen to offers for these players. Now, it doesn't mean that because they're open to offers that they would definitely sell. There may be a threshold that needs to be hit in terms of the financial offer for them to consider doing that, for them to allow that to happen. You just don't know. But, you know, they are players that do fall further down the pecking order thanks to Riccardo Calafiori's arrival when that eventually happens. And it is very much a case of when now, I would say, rather than if. terms of Kieran Tierney, there's no surprises there. We all felt that he would be leaving come this summer. The fact that he returned from Real Sociedad with an injury that he picked up at the Euros isn't great because it makes it more difficult to move him on. But someone somewhere will take a punt on Kieran Tierney because we all know that when he's fit, he's a good player. The problem is that like some of these other players we've been talking about, Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, etc., injuries have been a real problem for him. So I wish Kieran Tierney all the best. I don't expect him to be an Arsenal player come the new season. And, when it comes to Kiwior and Zinchenko, for me personally, it would depend on what's on the table. That's very much how I see that. But no real surprises there. Going to take a really, really short pause. Then we're going to dive into the live chat a little bit. And then we're going to talk about our main story, which involves Mikel Merino. Is he going to be an Arsenal player come the end of the window? We'll have to wait and see. But things are looking promising.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Let's get some of your thoughts on the subjects that we've just been discussing there. We've been talking Eddie Nketiah. We've been talking Emile Smith-Rowe. We've been talking Kiwior, Zinchenko, Tierney, etc., etc. Remember, by the way, if you haven't done so already, please do leave a like on the video. It really, really does help. There's a few hundred of you with me live right now, which is incredible, but the likes are nowhere near reflecting that. Can we set a target for 500 likes on today's video? I'd be delighted if we could get anywhere near that. Let's see what you guys are saying. Lots of people reacting to that comment that I went after a little bit earlier on in the show. I know people say ignore it, and you should ignore it, generally speaking. But I just find it funny that some people literally tune in to people's content to have a go about it. I mean, what does that say about you if you've got nothing better to do than log on and spend your spare time watching someone that you obviously don't like? It's mad, isn't it? It's mad. Battle Gnome says on Emile Smith-Rowe, hate that it just didn't work for him after the 21-22 season. Gunner329 on Emile Smith-Rowe says, do you think that's to bump his price up higher, saying we aren't overly keen to sell? I wouldn't be surprised. It might send a message to Fulham, for example, who we know are among those with a genuine interest, that says, we're not desperate here. So you're not going to lowball us. You're not going to drag this out until the end of the window and then throw in a lowball offer that we feel we have to accept because we've made our minds up and we've decided that actually the best thing for everyone is that he goes. If you put out this message that you're not desperate, and that's the problem we've had in recent years. We've always been desperate to get rid of the dead wood. And now for the first time in a while, having cut away a lot of that dead wood, we've got players that, we wouldn't mind moving on and we wouldn't mind trying to bring in some money for, but we're not desperate anymore. Like if Emile Smith-Rowe stays and is part of that squad, that's fine because he's a good enough player. But if he doesn't, then it isn't going to make a massive dent in our chances either because of the bit part that he's played in recent years. So we would do business, but we would only do it at the right price. And I think that's the right way to be. Lewis says Arteta had more than enough opportunities to give ESR chances last season and didn't take them. Can only assume that Arteta believes he doesn't fit the system anymore. I don't think he's a perfect fit for the system because I've heard a lot of Arsenal fans say, "We'll use him as an 8." Not for me. It doesn't really work. I don't see Emile Smith-Rowe as an 8. I equally don't see him as a winger either anymore, just because of how high up we push our wingers. The fact that we like to attack with a front five. If Martin Odegaard were to spend the period on the sidelines, and touch wood that doesn't happen because he's our captain and he's super important, then that's where Emile Smith-Rowe would play for me. He has to be the one from midfield with the most creative license, the one that can roam the most, the one that has the least defensive responsibility. He can't be the guy in between, which is the left 8 in Arsenal's current system. So, maybe he doesn't fit the system anymore. What else have we got? Lots of you talking Calafiori, talking Merino as well. We got a bit of spam in the chat, which we're gonna block because we don't want any of that. we're going to move on to the Mikel Merino stuff in just a minute. Neil Cooper says, hello, Harry. I'm in beautiful Sandorini. How's things there today? Do you know what? It's a miserable day here in London. It's warm, but it's cloudy. It's muggy. You feel like it could rain at any point. Certainly how I felt on my way into work this morning. Santorini is a beautiful place. Enjoy it. Greece, I might be biased. Best place on earth. Go and enjoy it. Greece and Cyprus, that is, of course. Go and enjoy it and have a good one, mate. And thanks for tuning in whilst on your holidays. What else have we got? Clem Diggerty, just on Kiwior before we move on. He says, I saw some of his stats from last season recently. Unfortunately, they were hugely underwhelming in comparison to our other options. Sell him if we can, plus either Zinny or Tommy. James, love your hairline. Hair transplant? No, I haven't had a hair transplant. You get all sorts in this chat box. You really, really do. Okay, then let's talk about our main story of the day, and it involves Mikel Merino, the Spanish international midfielder that has been linked with a move to Arsenal quite heavily in recent weeks. And a report came out from Spain last night. Mikel Merino, the journalist, he is someone who's very, very well known over in Spain. I'm not sure what his kind of record or affiliation with Real Sociedad is he someone that is plugged in to that club? I don't know, but this seems to have caught on quite a bit, and there's a lot of English outlets looking at this and saying, well, Mikel Merino's saying there's probably something to this. Now, he hasn't got the biggest following on social media, so it's easy to think, well, he's not one of the biggest journalists. But from speaking to a Spanish colleague earlier today, it seems like he is someone that a lot of people have quite a bit of faith in. So again, I'd never say get carried away with these things. I'd never say take them as gospel, because you just never know. But with Mikel Merino reporting it, it does feel like maybe Arsenal are serious about this now, and that progress has been made. And what he said was that Arsenal and Mikel Arteta are getting closer to Mikel Merino. And that was off the back of a post that he put out back on July the 11th. So this was kind of like the follow-up, the quote tweet, if you like, where he said that it was getting closer. His original post was back earlier this month, 11th of July it was. And he said, Real Sociedad consider Mikel Merino lost, but his best destination would be Arsenal. Arteta knows that he's a good signing, and it would be a good opportunity to take a great player for an amount that others cannot pay, and he would return to playing with Martin Odegaard, obviously a player that he has a previous relationship with, given that Odegaard spent some time, of course, with Real Sociedad previously. So, look, for a long, long time, for a lot of last season, it felt like Arsenal fans were sitting there scratching their heads as to why we allowed Granit Xhaka to leave, particularly in that first half of the season where the midfield balance looked a bit off. Things weren't really clicking. We weren't as creative as we know that the team can be. A lot of us were sitting there going, we've let Granit Xhaka go. We haven't replaced him with a like for like. And actually, this might come back to bite us on the backside. Mikel Merino is as close to Granit Xhaka as you are going to find without buying Granit Xhaka again. That's literally how I've seen him described by so many people. And it was something that I pointed out on the scouting report video that we did last week about Mikel Merino after the European Championships finished. Now, if you want to watch that, if you want to check it out, the link is in the description below. You can go back and check it out. It is available in podcast format as well if you prefer to listen to it on the go. But this is the Spanish Granit Xhaka. Left-footed, comfortable on the ball. Even the way he shapes his body when he brings the ball under control, it will remind you of Granit Xhaka if you get the opportunity to watch a bit of him. People maybe labeled Mikel Merino earlier in his career as a more defensive player, and over time people saw that that wasn't really his game. He is more of a box-to-box man. He is more of a sort of ball player than a destroyer. And obviously, I thought he did a really good job with Real Sociedad over the last couple of seasons, but perhaps more so in the limelight with Spain in the summer. Now, he didn't start every game, for Spain at the European Championships, but he came on in pretty much every game, and he had some big impact in some of those matches. Pamplona born, left-footed. He is 28 years old, and we talked about this in the scouting report, that, you know, maybe that's not the typical age profile that Arsenal normally go for. But we've also heard reports from the likes of James Benge and other people that actually what Arsenal are looking to do this summer is bring in more of the Jorginho/Trossard types that raise the floor of the squad rather than push the ceiling much higher. So to try and create a more level playing field, to try and create an environment whereby Mikel Arteta feels way more comfortable in rotating, because we all know that Arsenal need that. We all know that Arsenal, if they want to compete on multiple fronts, need to be able to rotate a lot more than they have done in recent seasons without the level dropping massively. Chenky says, if Granit would have stayed last season, we would have won the league. And perhaps that is true. Because, as I say, for the first half of the 23-24 season, we were trying to figure out how to strike the right balance in midfield. We lost Granit Xhaka. We didn't replace him with a like for like. We used Kai Havertz there. That didn't really work. Not because Kai Havertz isn't a useful player, but because he's not that guy. And it feels like Mikel Arteta learned that lesson. Clearly can't rely on Partey's fitness. Has the option of dropping Rice back if he needs to. And has Jorginho there too. But feels like a more natural left eight is something that this team requires. Given Merino's contract situation, given his age, you're likely to get this deal done for around about the 20 million mark, which is good value, I think, particularly given he's just coming off the back of a Euro winning campaign with Spain. So I think this is one that I'd quite like to see us do. And if we could get Calafiori over the line, which we hear is very close, and we can bring Mikel Merino in, we've added to the squad. Now, neither of those players are guaranteed to be starters when the season kicks off, but both of those players raise the floor of the squad, I would say. Let's take a few of your questions and a few of your comments before I go on this subject. Get involved in the live chat. Let me know what you think. If you haven't done so already, please do leave a like on the video. We're still nowhere near the target that we set. Like, subscribe, all the rest of it. Help us on the path to 35,000 YouTube subscribers. I'd love to get there by the time the new season starts. That would be amazing. And also, if you're listening on audio, please do leave us a review. That really, really does help too. Very, very short pause, and then we're going to go into the chat box for the last few minutes. Okay, let's take people's opinions on what we've been discussing. Michael says, what's your opinion on Pedro Neto? Fantastic player, but the injuries worry me. I'm always overly worried about injuries. I think I've kind of discovered that about myself this summer, because I say it about Neto. I've said it about Calafiori. Although I love them as players, I just worry about that. It'll always kind of be in the back of my mind, which I hate. But it is a real thing and something you need to consider. BB says, to be clear, when we say Merino is like Xhaka, are we talking about the Xhaka who's played most of his career as the left side of a double pivot, or the 2022-23 Xhaka who played left eight for us, or both? I'm talking about the 22-23 Xhaka who played left eight for us, because I think they have a lot of the same qualities. And I think that for a long time, we played Granit Xhaka as a single defensive midfield pivot, and that just didn't suit him and didn't work. And as a result, he was made a scapegoat. Mikel Arteta came in and recognized that pretty quickly and adjusted his position, adjusted his role. And then we saw the best version of Granit Xhaka at Arsenal that we'd ever seen. I think Merino's skill set is very similar. So, like, for example, I wouldn't have him as the lone six at Arsenal. I'd be bringing him in to be a left eight. Now, he can tuck in and help and support the six at times, but to give him that sole responsibility, I think would be silly, because it doesn't work in line with his skill set. So, yeah, to be clear, I'm talking about the last season we had of Granit Xhaka, which was the best version. Lorcan says, I'm interested in this signing based on his dual one statistics, but I still think we need a ball progressor. Partey has passed it, in my opinion, and Jorginho can't play every game. Yeah, the ball progressing thing is important. And I think it's become even more important since Alexander Zinchenko stopped being a viable option for us in defense, because he used to bring a lot of that from midfield. Can we work on other players doing that? Can we improve Declan Rice in that department? Can we use Ben White to do it a bit from the right side? Can Timber do it being in the side? Can Calafiori do it from the left-hand side if that is indeed where he plays? I think we don't always need to look at it as we're losing a ball player or we don't have a ball player, we need a ball player. Can we fix some of these problems internally? I think that's really important as well. What else have we got in the live chat? Just going to pick up a couple more. Big thanks to Baron, who's just become a member. Thank you so much for your support. Really, really do appreciate it. Delisu says Calafiori is pretty much guaranteed to start at left back, Harry. I think in time, that's where he'll be. And I think in time, that's probably the position that he'll make his own. But I do believe that at the start of the season, Jurriën Timber's probably going to play there. I'm not saying that's his ideal position. He is ultimately a right-footed player. He was a centre-back who played sometimes at right-back, and Arsenal have been using him at left-back in the limited opportunities they've had. But the point I'm making here is that there's no need really to bring Calafiori in and go drop in the middle of the ocean and say, come on, swim or sink. We can afford to blood him in because we've got the right players there to manage that transition and make it as smooth as possible for the young man. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Big thank you to Lorcan. Thanks for your kind words, mate. He says, big up, Harry. Been listening for about 5 years now, and you're always getting better and giving us better content. Thank you so much, mate. I really, really appreciate the love and the support, and I'm super grateful to everyone that tunes in, but in particular those that have been with me from the beginning, because it hasn't always been easy, and there's been times where you've been spending loads of time making content and looking at it and then going, oh, nobody's watching it, nobody's listening to it. What do I do differently? And it's very easy, I think, to veer away from what you believe is the right thing because you're after numbers. And we've tried to approach it in a slightly different way. And over time, there's been growth. It's not been as fast as maybe some of the other channels or podcasts, but I'm proud of what we've created. So thank you so much. Okay, I am going to leave it there because I'm about to get kicked out of this studio. There are people waiting at the door to come in and record something. I didn't book it. I just sneaked in for half an hour to bring you guys an episode. If you're interested in some more chat, we are going to be on TalkSport 2 later, myself and Flex, Manchester United fan, from 3 till 5 on the social. We're going to talk Man United. We're going to talk Chelsea. We're going to talk Arsenal as well, and whatever else is coming up in terms of the news cycles today. Thank you as always for joining me. I'll be back very, very soon with more. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a great day. Remember, leave a like on the way out. All the best. Goodbye.